bikers, and welcome to another edition of The Pedalshift Project. The Pedalshift Project is a series of conversations, thoughts, and experiments around the bike touring lifestyle. From tips and tricks to ideas on how to ride your ride, let's shrink the world by bike. Show notes and more are available at pedalshift.net/202, and you can email the show pedalshift@pedalshift.net or call the voicemail hotline 202-930-1109 and check Pedalshift out on all the socials as well. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 202nd edition of the Pedalshift Project. 202, it's my area code. Woohoo! This covers the third day riding the C&O on my no-contact, self-supported, self-contained ride. I wanted to mention a few things at the top of the show, just like last week. At the time I was on the C&O, as you all know, the campsites were officially open, even though the water pumps and the bathrooms were all closed. Indeed, those bathrooms were strapped shut. Since then, the National Park Service has closed the campsites as well. Please do not take this podcast as license to go camp on the C&O because those campsites are closed, and don't camp on them until those closures have been lifted. I know I won't. As I sit here towards the middle end of April, there's a lot of mixed messages that I'm receiving, and I know you all are as well, on what 2020 is going to look like for bicycle touring. I know that the podcast is going to continue, and I have some older tour journals that have never been featured on the podcast that I will potentially be featuring on here if I'm not able to get out there on the bike. So one way or the other, you're stuck listening to me talk about my bike tours, whether you like it or not. Well, I guess you can unsubscribe, but there you go. Next week, I'm going to do takeaways from this particular tour. And I'm also going to give some initial thoughts on what I'm thinking about for bike touring this spring, this summer, and beyond. One other thing I wanted to mention is the Sprocket Shift happy hours. They have been continuing. As I sit here right now, we have done 4 of them, and they're live shows that we do on Zoom. The date of the next one you can always find out over at pedalshift.net/happy hour. It's me and the folks from the Sprocket podcast, and we basically do a nice tight 40 minutes on one topic, and we always get kicked off of Zoom in a super comical way. So that alone is worth it. But go check it out. Go check out the past ones. We've been recording them in video for most of them. Audio, they're all being featured over at the Sprocket podcast. So if you're subscribed to them, you've already been able to hear these. But come join us live. It's a lot of fun, and we always get people involved. So pedalshift.net/happy hour for the next one.
Good morning. 8 a.m. from the inside of a dry tent that is very wet on the outside. You probably heard in my voice I'm just sort of stirring, although I have been largely up since 5 in the morning when the thunderstorms started rolling through here. Pardon me while I sip my coffee. Yeah, we got some rain. I have not unzipped the tent more than to be able to rock the stove in the vestibule to get some hot water going here. But I'm seeing puddles, massive puddles. It's going to be a muddy mess. So I'm going to let those trails percolate a little bit for a few hours before I start rolling. Now, this will be an excellent test of the new surface as I roll back towards DC. I have about 40 miles of trail roughly? It starts around mile marker 35. Mile marker 30, and I'm at about 63. So yeah, about 33 miles of this good trail. And I think that's at least where I'm sitting right now. That's my goal, is to get essentially down there for today. I do have obviously tomorrow to play with as well. If I am feeling it, if the weather is cooperating, and it looks like it might, it appears that most of the rain is done, but boy, did it really come down. So I'm thinking that the trail conditions from there on the kind of historic surface, will be suboptimal for a late start and getting in a quote-unquote full-day ride. So I do have a couple of options. If I really am feeling like getting back to DC this evening before sundown's at 7:30, there is a road route that I've done before. I think I may have jinxed myself by mentioning the flooding situation. The flood that happened all those years ago was at a campground that's essentially 300 yards or so away from the end of the good surface of the trail near Edwards Ferry. And I do know for a fact that there is a road right out of there that is doable and rideable. So I may consider that, or I may consider just staying at a campground at either the floody one, which that might not be such a great idea after a heavy rain like this. This wasn't that bad of a rain considering compared to the past. What will be interesting is the low water crossing in a few miles from here. It'll take me about an hour's worth of riding at least to get there, but that'll be interesting to see if the water levels have risen above that point. It probably wouldn't be so bad that it would be uncrossable, but usually it takes a good solid day before rains kind of collect all that water throughout all the area and pushes it down that tributary there. But we'll see. That'll be interesting, and you'll definitely hear about it because that'll be a today thing. The interesting thing about the surface the good surface here, the resurfaced area, is I find that the gap is tough to ride in the rain or right after the rain. The trail surface does drain really nicely. It doesn't pool. That's great. That's great for sort of like, long-term, medium-term stuff. But short-term, right after a rain, it's a little rough. It's a little tough. Also, since this is a newer trail, really hasn't packed down quite as well as the gap has. So it's possible it might be a little sloggy to go through. So that's another reason why I'm considering splitting this up into 2 days, not unlike how I did it coming out here. So that's sort of where we're at right now. The thunder was pretty gnarly. Luckily, there wasn't much in the way of wind, but it was all good. It did wake me up though, so I'm a little slow getting up here. Maybe have a cup of coffee, maybe two. Might make a hot breakfast this morning. I've got a can of beans that has my name on it. And then the delicate process of shaking this tent out and trying to get it to be somewhat dry. It does not appear that we're going to get any kind of sun in the way that would be helpful for drying it. So I will be utilizing my how to pack a wet tent skills. And if I do end up camping in it, I'll be crawling into my least favorite thing, a potentially wet tent. But I think that what I might do is keep the outer pieces, both the footprint and the fly, separately rolled up and maybe outside of the bag, or maybe those will go inside the bag. And if it's not going to rain, keep the tent piece elsewhere. It's tough call. We'll have to kind of see how it all goes. But all good. Survived the night, no problem. Very comfortable, very warm, and I got a cup of coffee. So nothing wrong with this. It's normal bike touring to experience a little bit of rain like this, and then to ride in the rain or ride in the remnants of it afterwards. So more to come later on in the morning or early afternoon when I get rolling. From mile marker 56.5, and I'm going to keep rolling. Let's ride together. Update on weather. I was packing up and decided that I had enough time to get everything together before the next round of rain came. And I literally had everything packed away when the first few drops came, and I was pulling on my rain pants. So timing was good. Interestingly, there was not a lot of rain. Wearing the rain pants probably wasn't super necessary. I think I'm going to keep them on, however, until I get to the other side of the outage, on the other side of Brunswick. One thing I am going to do is to break slightly from the zero contact and water up in the town of Brunswick. As I mentioned the other day, there is a public water fountain there. So I am going to check it out, and I'm going to use some piece of fabric or a bandana or something, maybe even my hat, to operate it so that I don't touch it with anything that would transfer anything. So I'm going to, as a consequence, have as much water as I'll need for the remainder of the trip. I did finish up my 4 liters for cooking, cleaning, etc., and consuming, of course. But I've also filled up my water bottles, which I have not had much of a drink of because I watered up pretty well before I started riding. But in any event, this is the intent is to have enough water should I need to camp tonight, or enough water just to get me home if I decide to go home, which is still kind of an open question at this point. We'll see how I feel. One thing that I'll say is I feel stronger riding this morning than I have in a while. I wonder if part of that is I've eaten down a lot of the weight of the food I was carrying. I had the second of 2
cans of baked beans for breakfast today. And those were easily the most heavy thing I was carrying food-wise. Also, just, burning the fuel, and I'm not carrying a lot of water at this point. Now, that'll change in a little bit. But, yeah, the weight is probably a factor. But also just getting my cycling legs underneath me a little bit. One thing that I had mentioned before was the questionable status of the trail surface. And I'm going to throw this out there. I've often said that this C&O surface is, I think, superior to the Gap surface, this new version of the C&O surface. And I think that after the amount of rain that we got, two reasonable-sized thunderstorms, boy, there are portions of this trail right now, right here, that are dry. The drainability is amazing. I'm not getting that wet ashtray feel that I so often get on the Gap when I ride. And usually that goes away after about a half a day or even a day after, but certainly not during a rainstorm. Yeah, this is, whatever they did, it's excellent. And this stretch from basically White's Ferry to, well, Shepherdstown, just shy of Shepherdstown, my understanding of. It's A+, really great. So if you've ever been questioning riding this trail because of the conditions, I think there's a good reason not to hold off anymore, especially with this section. Morning. Given the conditions, you probably wouldn't be surprised that there are far fewer people out on the trail. That was the first person I've encountered since Harper's Ferry, and I'm just about to Brunswick right now. So that might make things a little bit easier, although I suspect as the rain has blown through, that'll change the further down the trail that I go. One thing that I thought was interesting as I was kind of scrolling around Twitter this morning, because DC has closed off the tidal basin, locked it up pretty tight for public access, I wonder if that's putting more pressure on the C&O, at least on the DC side. Certainly not all the way out here, but that might be another reason why there are more people up. Yeah, makes some sense. So there's that. Well, in any event, I am not very far from Brunswick, and for a water up opportunity and maybe a snack, I think I'm going to start liberally eating my stuff just to kind of help me power through these miles, because I think no matter what, I'm going to push and do the majority of the miles today if I don't go all the way back. So more to come. Here we are from the edge of Brunswick, Maryland. And as I should have checked before, water is out. There's a water fountain and a pump. The pump is locked, padlocked, and the water fountain is not operable. So that is that in terms of getting fresh water. There is a restaurant here that is doing carry out. I suppose I could use and still be in my no contact rules, but I think I'm going to pass. I have enough food. If I need more water than what I've got, which if I camp, I certainly will, I do have a filter. So that is that. I'm going to continue on. Next you'll hear from me is probably at the outage. Off we go. We're back at mile marker 52 and a half, or whatever it is. I'm zipping up, and we're going to ride across the low water crossing. The water levels are no higher than they were the other day. So as I suspected, this is not going to be a problem. I'm just going to squeeze on the brakes as I go down this gravelly but not too bad surface. It actually should be okay given the conditions. And here we go down the incline. I may not be able to go up the other side, so I may hop off, but thought, hey, let me at least ride across this and give you the soundscape. All right, yeah, I'm not even going to bother. That's I don't know what angle that would translate to, but it's 10% grade, give or take. So I'm not going to try that fully loaded with no real momentum. As you can probably hear the current here. Really pretty here. I mean, it's jacked up, don't get me wrong. Looking back towards where the rail tracks are, and you can take a look at the old video. Really nothing has changed. They certainly haven't put anything in that would clean this up. It is a full-fledged washout disaster, and it's going to be really interesting to see what they end up doing with the trail. They may be better off building a new high water passageway with modern materials, because that bank is just really, it's just eroding away, and the old culvert bridgey thing that was built back in the day, there's almost none of it left. I don't think that that's worth building off of unless they want to do it for historical purposes, but there's a lot of jacked up, broken, formerly used locks and things along those lines that are not being maintained, but they'll leave the ruins of them. Now, this is the hard part, pushing up this thing. It's funny, I thought the other one was steeper, but this one definitely is. Ugh. Powered by Pop-Tarts. I do want to make sure that I am getting plenty of hydration. I think I'm in the mental state of conserving my water, and I really shouldn't do that. I should drink and stop and fill up when I have a good opportunity. I suppose that stream would have been a good opportunity, come to think of it. Maybe I'll, after I'm done recording, run down there and fill up the dirty water bladder, so I have it for later, but maybe not filter it right now. Oh, trail conditions. So after Brunswick, it was a newer section of that trail. It behaved a lot like the Gap. So I think that my supposition on this new trail surface is pretty solidified now. After rains, if it has not been there for a while, if it's been within the last year or so put down and not really compressed over time through use, the effect in rain is ashtray, sandy beach kind of a thing. There were deer tracks in there that were pretty well put in, so it's soft, and I expect that to be the same for the rest of the route here. So, we'll just see how much extra energy it takes. I was in a very low gear just to kind of spin and not be pushing into it, because I know that'll ruin my energy real quick. But it's pretty pleasant, I have to say. Just with having fewer people on the trail, I've encountered so few people. This is exactly the ride I wanted, so I'll take the more adverse conditions. I think I wanted to be alone a little bit more than I expected, so maybe that's part of it. But anyways, whether this ends up being 1 or 2 days on the way back, we'll have to see. But here we are at mile marker 52 and rolling. I'm going to go get some dirty water for a later filtering and drink some clean water, and I'll be back later on in the afternoon. From Monocacy Aqueduct, which is, let's see, probably mile marker 40-ish. We'll call it 40. But I'm having the bit of lunch here at the picnic tables that I never go to that overlook the upstream side of the aqueduct away from the river. And it's very nice here. Quite a few people are here, considering it's a cold, gray day. I think the continuation of the increased usage of these areas, which is great. But had a very fast ride here, I think, given all the conditions and everything. And trail conditions definitely improved. It's a fast ride, and it's making me think, as I run out of this type of trail and would have 30 miles on the historic trail, at least 5 of which would be really, really rough. I'm definitely toying with doing a road route on the way back. And of course, if I do that, that is making the commitment that I would be going home. So there is a campground about 200 yards away. So I think that that's going to be the point where I decide, am I camping here and coming back in the morning, or am I going to make the ride? At this point, I'm feeling pretty strong. After lunch, I'll probably, have quite a few calories in me and be ready to roll. And it's, maybe 10 miles to that point. So odds are strong that I'm going to be making this the final day of the tour, seeing as it's only 20 after 1 right now. Can easily be back well before sunrise. Sunset. Hopefully before sunrise. Still wearing my rain pants, although the rain has definitely stopped. It's cool enough that keep having a double layer of pants is fine for me, but I have actually stripped down to just one wool layer. And that's been working really well for me. Good temperature regulation. While I'm sitting here, I pulled out my big puffy jacket, though, and that's keeping me nice and warm while I sit here and prep some lunch and eat. I'm hopeful that the road route is less trafficked than it normally is. It's actually pretty rural and tertiary roads at best, but the closer we get to DC, the more busy it gets, especially as we get closer to the trail. I think that there's also an option of rejoining the trail at Swains Lock, which would be about 16 miles to go, and that would avoid the gnarliest of the historic trail, although it certainly would still be busy. And, of course, I'd be going through the area near Potomac, which is really going to be quite busy, I think, with a lot of folks here on a Saturday. So, things to think about. I think I'd like to maximize my time on the trail, but I think avoiding the one section doesn't sound like a bad idea to me at all. Coming to you from about mile marker 34 at the Turtle Run Hiker-Biker campsite. It is a muddy bog here at the campsite, which gives me probably a preview of what trail will look like down the road here. I've got about 4 more miles of good trail. For whatever reason, I'm just sort of, I don't want to take the road route. So I think as of the moment, even though I know it's going to be rough going for about, 30 miles or so, and give or take, and really bad for the first 5. I think I'm still going to go for it, just to stay off the road. And I think that given what the weather is like today, there are fewer people. I probably won't run into too many people between Edwards Ferry and probably right before Swains Lock. I have been seeing a bunch of folks walking, and the closer we get to DC, bigger city, bigger burbs, more people potentially, but we'll kind of see how it goes. I'm feeling good. I just I got a Coke from the vending machine at the White's Ferry spot, and that's going to fuel me for at least a few miles, and maybe even give me the energy to get through the kind of lousy section of the trail. But that's where I'm leaning right now. And this also gives me the opportunity and the option that if this just drills me down, that I can camp at either Horsepen Branch at mile marker 26, or even at Swains Lock at mile marker 16, if I'm just done and can't, don't have the energy to go any further. Weather is cool to cold. I threw on my jacket because it's starting to spit up a little bit, like a little drizzle, a little foggy kind of thing. Yeah, not great weather, but perfectly fine to bike in. And it's just interesting, the difference between the last 2 days where the weather was a little bit nicer, but, I got my biking legs underneath me a little bit more, and just kind of pounding these miles out. I passed by the campsite that I stayed at on Thursday night, and that obviously means that I've done more miles today than yesterday, so I guess that says something. I don't know. We'll see. I've got plenty of water left. I've got 1 full bottle left, and frankly, I'm just not drinking a lot, and I also have a quote-unquote dirty bag of water, which I can filter, and actually I can just drink straight out of the filter, so I think I should have plenty of water to get me through for the rest of the ride, I'm thinking. So we'll see. And worst case, just grab some more water out of the river and go from there. From mile marker 30, a very quiet mile marker 30, except for the plane that just went overhead a few minutes ago, we are rolling. I swear to you, I'm only coughing when I'm recording, because I think I'm not talking and not coughing when I talk, I cough. It's very strange. Anyways, I'm fine. Trust me. I'm just very, I think any of us who have like a little weird cough are a little, what's the word I'm looking for? Sensitive about it, just because it's like cough. Oh no. In any event, it is super quiet today. So much nicer to have the trail this quiet. This was the experience that I was really hoping for. Feeling really good, feeling really strong. A little jolt of sugar and caffeine, I think, is doing me well. So I'm just going to keep pounding out the miles. Trail conditions, I have to say, of course, it's only been about a mile on the historic trail. It's gravelly, so it's not nearly as smooth, but it's nice so far. I expect around give or take mile marker 25 or so, things are going to degrade pretty badly for a few miles. That's the stretch that's just miserable. So I'm going to figure that's going to be slow. But this stretch, if the first half of it isn't so bad, then I think I made the right call. I'm liking this so far. Really gray and lifeless compared to what it felt like the last couple of days. I mean, the same flowers are out, but just the dominance of the overcast day just puts a real pall on things. It feels more like late winter rather than early spring with the way things are right now. But it's been fine. I mean, I'm glad I got to experience it on the way out in a different way. And this section of my trip, the fact that I'm kind of pounding miles out, I'm not stopping to sniff the flowers, literally or figuratively. In any event, I'll have a few decisions to make. In about 4 miles, there's a campground. And then again in about 14 miles. And those are my last 2 options for campgrounds. I decided to go this way to give myself the option. I'm going to assess how I feel at each of them. I feel pretty strongly I'm going to skip Horsepen Branch, which is usually just a mud pit after weather like this. So probably skip that. But then Swains Lock. The nice thing about Swains Lock would be that I would be very close to DC. It would only take me about an hour and a half to get back in the morning. So I could be back by 9 a.m. if I left by 7:30, which, well, probably unlikely, but certainly by 10 a.m. With the way things are. And tomorrow's supposed to be a nice day, so. But then again, I like the quietness of the trail right now, and it would not be quiet on a nice Sunday morning. Mile marker 26 or so, Horsepen Branch Hiker-Biker Campsite. This is the first sort of real one. Swains Lock, I don't know why I consider it a little bit different, even though it is considered one of the first of the 31 if you're starting from the DC side. But this is the first one that sort of resembles the others. It's not big. It doesn't have a parking lot attached to it, et cetera, et cetera. So trail conditions have deteriorated. They're not, it's interesting though. It's not that bad. I got passed by a guy who was just like rifling through it on a what looks like a hybrid bike. No fenders, no nothing. He's just going right through all the puddles. And I'm just like, well, that's awesome. That is A+. It's such a shame, this section of the trail, because what happens is it just gets so rutted and nasty that even in dry conditions, a few hot summer days dries it all out. And then it's just rutted and nasty, and it's a tooth rattler. So, boy, if they're going to be redoing the trail, I feel like I'm a broken record. I would love it if this were a candidate. I do know that there are sections around here that are so low that odds are they could get flooded out. But some of these feels like they're high enough that maybe you could get away with it, but who knows? I defer to the Canal Trust and to the Park Service on this one. All right, I have decided, as you can probably tell from the energy in my voice, that I'm going to keep going. It's about 10 or so miles between here and the last chance for camping. And from there, I'm going to decide whether I'm going to want to camp or I'm going to just push on home. So stay tuned for more, stuff. You can tell it's towards the end of my day. Brain's not working. From about mile marker 16, I just passed Swains Lock, which was my last fully legal camping opportunity. I have done some stealth camping before, and there's the Marsden Track one where scouts normally go, but I can't imagine they're using it at mile marker 10. But I have already kind of committed to Kimberly that I'll be back by 7 o'clock, and there you go then. I guess I'm gonna be home by 7. Good energy, but I've been stoking the fire with sugar all afternoon here just to kind of keep going. Water supply is fine. Don't anticipate an issue. More folks than other areas, but that's probably going to really pick up in a moment as I go through Great Falls. But it's been manageable. A much more pleasant riding day despite the conditions. Some folks fishing. And more dog walkers than you can shake a stick at. That is for sure. Some of them taking up. Well, here we go. Hello. So yeah, it's been a very pleasant ride. I think I'm going to be one tired guy when I get back. The trail conditions, of course, were wet, but I just bombed through them from Horsepen Branch. I think I was in inspired by No Fender Bum Through the Mud guy. And I'll tell you the one thing that's been more, I forgot how bad they can get this time of year. Gnats. There are clouds of gnats over each of these mud puddles, and I have a few of them lodged inside my left eyelid right now, so I'm hoping I can blink those out. But every time I get one out, a new one comes and flies in and replaces it. Fantastic. But a small price to pay for a fantastic ride. From about mile marker, we'll call it 2, we're pretty much coming into Georgetown now. And I'm starting to have all sorts of weirdness with my bike. I'm hearing squeaks. With my... basically, there's a lot of grit and goo in there that needs some TLC. So this bike needs a cleaning. Furthermore, I have been having to pump up my front tire on a couple of occasions within the last 5 miles. I think I've got enough inflation to get me home, but clearly there is some kind of a leak, or perhaps it's a leak because it holds for enough. But yeah, I'm about ready to get back. I said 7 o'clock, and I think it'll be about 7 o'clock. But what a bit of a slog to end the day, but it kind of makes sense because trail conditions were much worse for these last 20-30 miles, and I'm slower. Clearly the bike is not in peak performance mode with all the grit and mud, and neither am I, quite frankly, by the time I get back. But about 65 miles when all is said and done. I'm really glad I did it. Cannot wait to jump in the shower, have some hot food, and then probably go to bed early. But this was great. This was exactly what I needed this tour. And I always enjoy bringing you all along for the ride. This one probably more so than ever before, just given the circumstances. So hope you enjoyed it. And feel free to check out all the posts on Instagram, and feel free to leave comments and whatnot. I'll play catch up probably tomorrow on all of that before I head back out the direction that I just came from, except using a motor vehicle this time, and the whole family going out to the cabin and actually make it to the cabin this time. So thanks so much for joining. This was a great tour, and I'm glad that you all came along for the ride.
Statistics. Miles ridden, 64. Functional water fountains in Brunswick, Maryland, 0. Functional vending machines in Whites Ferry, Maryland, an upset, 1. Road routes considered then rejected, 1. Beavers, 0. Only on day 1. Slow leaks, 1. And as always, we like to close out the show with a special shout out to the Pedalshift Society. Because of support from listeners like you, Pedalshift is a weekly bicycle touring podcast with a global community, expanding into live shows and covering new tours like the Kessel Run and the Missing Link bike tours. If you like what you hear, you can support the show for $5, $2, or even $1 a month. And there's one-shot and annual options if you're not into the small monthly thing. Check it all out at pedalshift.net/society. On to the society. Kimberly Wilson, Caleb Jenkinson, Cameron Lean, Andrew McGregor, Michael Hart, Keith Nagel, Brock Didis, Thomas Skadow, Marco Lowe, Terrence Manson, Harry Telgadis, Chris Barron, Mark Van Ram, Brad Hipwell, Stuart Buchan, Mr. T, Nathan Poulton, Stephen Dickerson, Vince LaGreco, Cody Florchinger, Tom Beninati, Greg Braithwaite, Sandy Pizzio, Jeff Muster, Seth Pollock, Joseph Quinn, Byron Patterson, Joachim Robber, Ray Jackson, Jeff Fry, Kenny Mikey, Lisa Hart, John Denkler, Steve Henkel, Miguel Quinones, Alejandro Aviles Reyes, Keith Spangler, Greg Towner, Dan Gebhardt, Jody Zeranin, Lucas Barwick, Michael Baker, Brian Bechtal, Reinhard Biggle, Greg Middlemas, Connie Moore, William Gothman, Brian Benton, Joan Churchill, Mike Bender, Rick Weinberg, Billy Crafton, Gary Matushak, Greg Latois Lopez, James Sloan, Jonathan Dillard, John Funk, Tom Bilch, Ronald Piroli, Dave Roll, Brian Hafner, Misha LeBlanc, Ari Messenger, David Grotke, Wally Estrella, Sue Reinert, John Lecko, Stephen Granada, Philip Mueller, Kevin Olhausen, Robert Lackey, Dominic Carroll, Jackie McCulloch, John Hickman, Jack Smith, and thanks also to all past and anonymous donors for helping to make this show happen. Thank you for joining. You can find Pedalshift at pedalshift.net for more great bicycle touring content. You can hear the Pedalshift project through Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. Opening music courtesy of Jason Kent off his self-titled album. The track is called America. Check out his band Sunfield's latest release, Mono Mono, wherever cool music is available.